Guys, we only have two certainties in this life. The first is death, and the second is that every beginning of the year there's going to be some controversy involving Dream. Yes, at the start of another year, we had yet another drama involving one of the biggest figures in Minecraft history. This time, the Green Man is being accused of using cheats to make a parkour run easier against some of the world's top content creators, including Technoblade at the time. What started as an impressive move became a technical debate, frame-by-frame analysis, and keyboard sound investigation. Now the community is divided, but why? It's simple. Was it insane skill, or was there something else going on? As they say, at the very end, you can sense a hint of something. Well, that's what we're going to find out. But first, imagine a game where giant tanks advance across the battlefield, supersonic jets rule the skies, helicopters provide air support, and warships exchange fire on the ocean. Yes, all of that happening in a single game. This is War Thunder, a free multiplayer action game that mixes ground, air, and naval combat in massive battles. The realism impresses. From vehicle behavior to explosion sounds, everything is designed so you feel the weight of every battle decision. Here, there isn't a simple health bar. One well-placed shot can shift a confrontation. Another cool feature is the range of military technology in the game. You can use everything from classic equipment like smoke screens to modern systems such as thermal vision, advanced radars, and guided missiles. Besides that, the game just received the Line of Context update, which brought even more content. Among the new features are new vehicles like Terminator, Ajax, Typhon, and Super Hornet, as well as infantry tests in closed mode. The Poland map has also been redesigned in a winter version, with new visual details that enhance the battles. And to try all of this, just download War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox using the link in the description. New players, as well as those who haven't played in over 6 months, receive special bonuses including 100,000 Silver Lions, the Eagle of Valor Decorator, and other rewards. And of course, besides PC and console, it's also worth checking out War Thunder Mobile, which brings these epic battles to your phone, both on iOS and Android. So check it out now through the link in the description, and let's get to the video. If you don't remember, between 2019 and 2020, Dream went from unknown to a global phenomenon, gaining millions of YouTube subscribers, with an absurd speed that still impresses even those who had been following the game for a long time. And the format that really put his name on the map was Manhunt. The idea was simple but chaotic. He tried to beat Minecraft while 2, 3, or even 4 friends chased him the whole time. This led to insane chases, improvised escapes, and moves that seemed impossible. And the audience started to see Dream as that player who always had a plan up his sleeve. It just so happened that around this same time, there was a huge and very famous event called the Minecraft Championship, or MCC, organized by Nox Crew, which brought together big creators and teams to compete in various minigames, including parkour, PvP, and movement challenges. And obviously, given Dream's prominence, he was constantly invited and participated. Over time, the established image was of a highly skilled player, particularly in movement, combat, and quick decision making. That's why a cheating accusation is so significant. His entire reputation revolves around being good at the game. Any suspicion of cheating isn't just another controversy, it's a direct blow to the foundation of his career. Especially since this isn't the first time Dream's name has been linked to cheating. Even before this discussion about parkour in the Minecraft Championship, he had already been involved in one of the biggest controversies in the history of speedrunning in the game. And that's important to remember because it completely changes the tone of the conversation. In 2020, Dream submitted a speedrun of version 1.16 to the official Minecraft speedrunning leaderboard. The group responsible for verifying the community's records noticed something unusual during their analysis of the recording. The drop rates of ender pearls and blaze rods were much higher than expected. For those who aren't unemployed and don't know what I'm talking about, basically, all mobs have a specific percentage chance to drop a certain item, and this chance is calculated based on probability. It's not guaranteed, it's not fixed. Sometimes you can kill 5 and not get anything. Sometimes you can get lucky, but in Dream's case, the luck seemed way too good. After a detailed statistical analysis and thousands of simulations, the conclusion was serious. The chance of that sequence of drops happening naturally was absurdly low, something almost impossible, like winning the lottery. But now, notice the man's modus operandi. Dream did not accept the accusations. Immediately, he denied the evidence, hired a professor to contest the calculations presented by the moderation team, and publicly criticized the verification process. The discussion became huge, took over the community, and basically turned into a public debate about math, probability, and competitive integrity. The outcome only came in 2021, a long time later, when Dream finally admitted that he did in fact have a mod active during the recording of the run. According to him, this mod was used in videos like Manhunt, and it ended up changing the drop rates without him noticing. At the time of the submission, he claimed it wasn't intentional, which sounds like nonsense to me, and at the time the community was divided. When I first made videos about the cheating accusations, Dream's fanbase harshly criticized me. But months later, Dream admitted that Super Lausa was right, and many people saw that as bad faith from the YouTuber, while others forgave him, and his history doesn't automatically prove anything. But at this point, one thing changes trust, and trust in this kind of case is sometimes half the battle. And with that, we arrive at the scenario where everything exploded. In Minecraft Championship 11 back in 2020, one of the mini-games was Parkour. For those unfamiliar with MCC, it's like an Olympics for YouTubers worldwide, with challenges that earn teams points. Parkour is the kind of game that separates the skilled from the insane, but for context, it wasn't just basic parkour. Long jumps near the limit and tight passages where the slightest mistake meant falling and losing everything, including parts that required steady speed, precise mouse control, and perfect jump timing. And here comes an important concept that a lot of people hear about but don't always fully understand: ticks. Minecraft works in small intervals of time called ticks. Basically, the game updates about 20 times per second. This means that each action, like pressing the keys to jump, is registered within a certain time, and in some extreme jumps, jumping a little too early or a little too late, even if it's just a matter of milliseconds, can make you fail. And back in MCC 11, many sections required exactly that level of precision. It wasn't just about running and pressing the spacebar any way you wanted. It was about aligning your character, keeping the rhythm, and calculating the right moment to jump, all while the environment was constantly changing. And it was in this context that Dream had a very strong performance. He advanced through difficult stages with a consistency that impressed a lot of people at the time. But now, years later, when experienced parkour players decided to review the match more carefully, questions started to arise. The main accusation revolves around a possible auto-jump macro, and if you don't know, a macro is basically an automated command. Instead of you having to press the key at the right moment yourself, the program does it for you, following a specific rule. In the case of auto jump, the idea would be simple. The system detects when the character is about to leave the edge of a block and executes the jump at exactly the last possible moment. Or, as you may have already understood, at the last tick, and that's exactly where people started highlighting several sections of parkour. Dream constantly jumps at the last possible tick before falling, making the jumps exactly perfect. It's literally the expression exactly perfect. And of course, once in a while, that's fine. Professional players do this all the time. But now, repeating this dozens of times in a row starts to look less like luck and more like a pattern. The point raised by the players who reviewed the match is him doing this, even in jumps where waiting until the last moment offered no advantage. In many cases, jumping a little earlier even increases your safety margin. At the last possible tick, your chances of making a mistake are higher. But even so, he always repeated the jumps.
Exactly perfect parkour sections, constantly falling, being literally exactly perfect. Professionals, but now there's only one bridge. Oh my god.
You have to use the TNT. Another detail that was noticed was the absence of those micro adjustments that almost every player makes, without even realizing it. When someone is about to jump from one block to another, naturally it happens. There's a slight lateral alignment, a fine mouse adjustment, and more precise positioning before making the jump. In the analyzed video, Dream repeatedly runs and jumps without hesitation or typical visual preparation. This brings up the second point, the repetitive movement pattern. The analysis suggests that he performs the jumps almost as if he's following a script. Run, reach the edge, jump, run, reach the edge, jump. Even when the angle changes or when the jump requires adaptation, the behavior seems identical every time. For those who are used to high-level parkour, this sounds really strange because there are several professional players and no one behaves this way. Each jump requires small variations. Sometimes the angle is different, sometimes the distance changes slightly, sometimes you need to compensate for the momentum. The movement is rarely an exact copy of the previous one. The suspicion then is that the macro is precisely compensating for these small human imperfections. The system guarantees the exact timing every time the character reaches the edge, and hitting the last tick repeatedly throughout an entire competition requires superhuman consistency. It's not impossible, of course, which was enough for many 12-year-old fans to defend Dream tooth and nail, and so, like everything on the internet, the discussion kept escalating. At first, there were just clips of reactions to those parkour segments from Dream. Many accused, many defended, tweets with tens of thousands of likes and a lot of drama. As expected, the discussion continued with people searching for more evidence until Dream himself appeared. For example, there was a moment with a slime block that became the second piece of evidence. In version 1.16, slime works in a specific way for those who suspect automation. When you land right in the center of the block, it gives you that classic bounce, launching you back up. Meanwhile, the edge of the slime doesn't behave the same way. Depending on where you step, it can act like a normal block. And another important detail, holding the spacebar while you're on the slime can interfere with your jump because you might end up losing your natural momentum. In other words, the best way to take advantage of the slime's boost is actually not to jump, just fall onto it, ideally in the center. It was noted in part of the parkour that Dream holds the spacebar where an experienced player typically wouldn't. The criticism says that this behavior would make more sense if the macro was active because the system could be trying to execute the jump automatically at the edge. Regardless of what would be ideal there, since the block wasn't a regular block, it was a slime block. What makes him lose momentum? And what's even more striking is that his behavior changes. He pauses to think and starts acting differently. With the next slimes, it's as if he realized that the macro was more of a hindrance than a help in this context.
Right there, you there.
Oh my god. Okay, here we go. This is new. I'm going to cry, guys. Hold on. This is a follow-up call. We have 7 full minutes.
It doesn't stop there because more and more reasons for suspicion just kept coming up. The next one, interaction with walls. In a specific part of the run, Dream runs toward a jump and ends up slightly scraping against a side wall. Then out of nowhere, he jumps and kills himself in the void. According to the accusation, at that moment, the macro would have detected the edge and executed the jump automatically, even though the collision with the wall had changed the positioning. The result is a weird and really dumb jump.
Yes, the hard part remains. Jorge, I'm not sure if you've been there, but there are many tough sections before it.
Oh my god, no. Ah, damn, I'm literally choking. Man.
Come on.
Good, we still have 5 minutes. Wow, they made this boat really hard.
Right after that, something else curious happens. He was about to make a relatively simple jump, something he had been landing with almost robotic consistency until then. Then he starts missing other basic moves that he was doing naturally before. The critic's interpretation is pretty obvious. After hitting the wall, he reportedly turned off the macro, realizing it was better to handle it manually. And with the cheat turned off, the jumps would once again depend only on human skill, which would explain the immediate mistakes that were very different from the rest of the gameplay. Then he turned it on again. And of course, all of this is a reading of behavior, and the controversy moves away from mathematics and into interpretation. Because you might look at this sequence and think it's just a natural variation in performance under pressure, and personally, I'll think you're a bit too naive if you believe that, but that's okay. Or you might notice the pattern of turning the tool on and off. It didn't take long for us to reach the well-known argument from authority, which was common here. One of the players who took part in this analysis, Sandwich Lord Chu, claims to hold the record on the practice map of MCC11 parkour itself. According to him, in certain specific sections, even though he's considered one of the best parkour players, his success rate was around 20%. In other words, out of every 5 attempts, only 1 was successful. In the case analyzed, Dream would have passed these same sections on the first try repeatedly. We're not talking about just one case, but a whole series of difficult parts completed on the first try. With that kind of timing right on the edge, in soccer terms, it's like scoring a bicycle kick from midfield, something that's not impossible, but it's extremely unlikely. While everyone analyzed frame by frame, Dream didn't stay silent. He posted a short video explaining his side, mainly trying to respond to the most technical part of the accusation, which revolves around those jumps. Regarding the last tick, the first thing he does is attack the idea that jumps on the perfect tick are something inhuman. According to him, the closer you jump to the ideal moment, the less chance you have of making a mistake. Experienced players don't count milliseconds in their heads. They develop muscle memory, allowing them to repeat movements precisely because their bodies have internalized the rhythm. It's like using stairs. You don't think about timing, you just feel it and move automatically. That's why many people trip on uneven steps. It disrupts the pattern. Dream built the core of the defense there, saying jumping from a standstill is less consistent than jumping while running. When you stop and press the spacebar at the right time, you rely on pure reaction, but moving creates a rhythm that syncs with the game's internal cycle. Instead of relying on randomness, you reduce its impact by keeping your run and adjusting small details in the timing of each jump. To reinforce his point, he showed a recording of his hand on the keyboard. In the video, he does dozens of consecutive jumps with perfect timing to show that high consistency isn't about macros. The idea is to show that with rhythm, it would indeed be possible to hit the right moment several times in a row.
That consistency is impossible. But as you can see, there's footage playing of me in the background, with a hand cam hitting 50 in a row with my feet both on the desk, just to be silly.
But the parkour community knew that, because the people arguing with him weren't casual players, but players who spend days and days analyzing mechanics and breaking records. In practice, the first flaw in Dream's argument is that the jumps he compares in the video are extremely different from the jumps performed in the MCC. This rhythm mechanic exists in the brain, but only when patterns are identical. With the MCC, the jumps differ. Distance and angle change, sometimes you exit a curve or have different momentum, or the context constantly shifts. So, consistency in a variable environment is much harder and less likely than hitting the same jump in a straight line. A creator well known in the parkour community, Choof, showed exactly this logic in his own video. He managed to land a sequence of extremely difficult jumps using rhythm and timing precisely to prove that consistency is possible, but that's exactly the point. He was repeating a specific pattern, not going through a course full of unpredictable variations like in MCC parkour.
Below you see this guy making perfect jumps. He says keeping a steady rhythm and jumping at the same interval each time makes consistency easier.
In other words, Dream's defense even proves that anyone with a certain skill level can get difficult timing right multiple times. What it doesn't prove is how he would apply this in a map full of angle differences, setups and jumps, and of course historical data. As we already know the guy, Dream didn't just make one post, he made a few shorts trying to counter the accusations more and more, but sooner or later the guys would find something. At this point, the investigation revealed much more objective evidence in the audio. The well-known creator Anti-Venom, an early influencer from abroad and a personal reference, chose to focus on another recording element, the keyboard sound. He found an analysis of the original video's audio on Twitter and noticed that in the more technical parts, which require jumping in sequence with precise timing, you can hardly hear the spacebar being pressed. The keyboard seems silent precisely in the hardest parts, but in less critical moments where the jump doesn't require extreme precision, the sound of the keyboard comes back, and very clearly. The suspicion raised is simple and direct. If he were pressing the spacebar repeatedly in such demanding jumps, some sound, at the very least, some sound no matter what, should be heard even with the audio compression of the broadcast. And if it doesn't appear, that could only indicate that the jump wasn't being performed manually at that specific moment. But at other times, yes, of course. You could argue there's still noise suppression, the microphone might miss some frequencies, or the broadcast could lose some audio details. But anyway, if Dream was really pressing the spacebar manually at a fast pace, not a single sound slipped through. Some residual clicks should show up there, and of course for everyone who's accusing Dream, the silence exactly in the most technical parts is not a coincidence, it's once again a pattern. Now when we put everything together on the table, we can already see that things aren't looking good. For Dream, what's weighing against him isn't just an isolated detail. There's the previous history involving an active mod in a speedrun record. There's the movement pattern that stands out from high-level players, there's the consistent last tick jumps, and now the supposedly silent audio right in the most critical parts. On the other hand, of course, there's also no official log showing the macro running, and there's no direct record of keyboard input. Imagine we're in a courtroom, in a trial where Dream is the defendant, and you are part of the 12 jurors who decide whether he's guilty or not. And based on the testimonies, the evidence, the arguments, the plausibility of hitting dozens of jumps on the last tick, the coincidence of his keyboard not making sounds at specific moments, and no other player being able to replicate that. So, do you all unanimously think that the defendant is guilty? Personally, I think so, and it's pretty obvious. But if there isn't unanimity among the two jurors, in the case of the United States for example, this case would be stalled and pushed further ahead. For example, the Minecraft Championship team would be responsible for conducting an official investigation and deciding on punishment or acceptance. At this point in 2026, I don't think cheating controversies are as relevant or appealing as they were in 2020 during the community and YouTubers' peak. The thing is, since Dream rarely accepts and always responds in a controversial way, there's always more fuel to the fire. There's always something simple turning into drama, and it becomes a soap opera all over again. They even brought up Technoblade, but I don't think that's right. Several posts with tens of thousands of likes on Twitter were saying things like, wow, Technoblade even playing with a cheater was still better. Technoblade this, Technoblade that. In fact, Kamami1812, if not the main creator of Minecraft Shorts Abroad, made a tweet claiming that Technoblade would have stopped playing MCC. After all this pressure to beat Dream, especially supposedly knowing behind the scenes that Dream could be a cheater, but he ended up deleting that tweet because Technoblade's own father replied to Kamami1812 denying some things. He said Technoblade sometimes got frustrated with the MCC but disliked controversies among creators. He also repeatedly stated he had no rivalry with Dream. Deep down, he would sum up that Technoblade's feeling was that everyone should get along, and at the end of the text, he still adds a final remark. He says that, with all due respect to Minecraft and games in general, considering everything that's happening in the world right now, maybe there are more important things to put our energy into. And of course, at the beginning of the year, we had several news stories involving the United States, Iran, Venezuela. Anyway, let's all look for a job, let's look for steady employment. Or at least not involve Technoblade's memory, even though he was a big part of MCC and did amazing things in that competition. As I've already mentioned in other videos here on the channel, in this controversy at least, let's leave him out of it for all intents and purposes. Just the biggest YouTuber in the history of the game involved in yet another controversy. And if you've watched this far, go follow me on Instagram, myamine77.